You'll die poor and alone, Mason, just like you deserve. Those were the last words Sophia said before she slammed the door of our apartment in Phoenix. I stood there holding a cardboard box filled with whatever she decided I was allowed to keep. A few shirts, some old textbooks from my biomedical engineering days, a photo of my mother from before the Alzheimer's took hold. The vicious prophecy hung in the air like desert heat, thick and suffocating. I was 32 years old, recently divorced, and according to my ex-wife, destined for nothing but misery. She took everything. The Honda Accord we'd financed together, the sectional sofa I'd helped pick out at that overpriced furniture store in Scottsdale, the joint savings account I'd contributed to faithfully for 6 years. Her lawyer was sharper than mine, a silk-suited shark who made my court-appointed attorney look like he'd passed the bar exam yesterday. I was too exhausted to fight, too beaten down by months of legal warfare and character assassination. So, I signed. I let her walk away with the life we'd built, because I didn't have the energy left to prove I deserved any of it. The worst part wasn't losing the money or the apartment with its view of Camelback Mountain. It was how she looked at me at the end. Like I was less than nothing. Like marrying me was the greatest mistake of her life, one she couldn't wait to correct. Like those 6 years we'd spent together were just a temporary lapse in judgment she'd finally come to her senses about. I moved into a studio apartment on the south side of Phoenix, the kind of place where the walls were thin enough to hear your neighbor's television through the drywall and the air conditioning unit wheeze like an old man climbing stairs. The Arizona sun turned that cramped space into an oven by noon, and it stayed that way until well past midnight. The carpet was stained with mysteries I didn't want to solve, and the bathroom faucet dripped with the persistence of Chinese water torture. But it was mine, or at least I was paying rent on it, and that was more than I'd had when I walked out of the divorce proceedings. I took a job operating a forklift at a medical supply warehouse in the industrial district near Sky Harbor Airport. Night shift, $14 an hour, and I was grateful for it, even though the work was mindless and my back ached constantly from the vibrations of the machinery. That first week I worked from 10 p.m. until 6 a.m., moving pallets of glucose monitors, blood pressure cuffs, and pharmaceutical supplies through the cavernous space. The warehouse was a metal cathedral of commerce, all steel beams and concrete floors, filled with the constant hum of conveyor belts and the beeping of reversing forklifts. My hands were raw from gripping the controls, my shoulders knotted from the constant turning and lifting, but I kept showing up because I didn't know what else to do. The work was honest, at least, physical. There was something satisfying about moving a pallet from point A to point B, completing a task that had a clear beginning and end. It wasn't the meaningful career I'd once dreamed of, but it paid the bills and kept me from thinking too much about how far I'd fallen. Sophia had already moved in with her new boyfriend, a guy named Lucas Martinez, who sold pharmaceuticals to hospitals across the Southwest. Lucas drove a black BMW 5 Series and wore Italian leather shoes that probably cost more than I made in a month. He was everything I wasn't: successful, confident, financially stable. He took Sophia to expensive restaurants in Scottsdale and weekend getaways to Sedona. She posted photos of their adventures on social media with captions about living my best life and finally happy. I didn't look at her Instagram because I wanted to. I looked because I couldn't stop myself, like probing a sore tooth with your tongue. Every post felt like a knife twist, a reminder of what I'd lost and what I'd never been able to provide. There she was at a rooftop bar downtown, cocktail in hand, Lucas's arm around her waist. There they were, hiking Camelback Mountain, both of them glowing with health and happiness. There they were, at some resort in Cabo San Lucas, matching sunglasses and $1,000 smiles. The irony wasn't lost on me that while I was moving medical supplies through a warehouse at 2 a.m, she was living it up with a pharmaceutical sales rep who made his money from the same industry that had once been my calling. I met Sophia when I was 24, fresh out of graduate school, with a master's degree in biomedical engineering and stars in my eyes about changing the world. She was 23, beautiful in that effortless way that some women possess, and worked as an administrative coordinator at Good Samaritan Medical Center. She had opinions about everything: politics, movies, the best restaurants in Phoenix, and I thought that meant she was smart and sophisticated. Turned out she was just demanding and never satisfied. We dated for 2 years before getting married in a small ceremony at the Desert Botanical Garden. I was working at a mid-sized medical device company called Innovate Health Solutions at the time, pulling down $75,000 a year and thinking I had a bright future ahead of me. The company specialized in developing affordable medical monitoring equipment for underserved communities. I believed in the mission, worked 60-hour weeks, and genuinely thought I was on the path to making a difference in the world. But Innovate Health folded 18 months into our marriage, a victim of poor management and venture capital firms that pulled funding when quarterly projections didn't meet their aggressive targets. Suddenly, I was unemployed, scrambling for freelance engineering gigs and contract work that paid a fraction of what I'd been making. Some months were decent. I'd land a project designing calibration systems for a lab or consulting on FDA compliance for a startup. Most months were brutal stretches of rejection emails and dwindling bank balances. Sophia made it clear she expected more from me, more ambition, more success, more proof that I was worth the investment she'd made in our marriage. She never said it directly. She was too smart for that. But she didn't have to. The way she sighed when I came home from another failed job interview, the way she stopped asking about my day, the way she started working late at the hospital more often, spending time with her pharmaceutical sales friends who had expense accounts and company cars. I tried. God knows I tried. I applied to dozens of engineering positions, sent out resumes that highlighted my education and experience, took online courses to stay current with the latest medical device regulations. I pitched ideas to investors who barely gave me 5 minutes before their eyes glazed over, and they started checking their phones. But nothing stuck. The medical device industry was consolidating, and there were too many qualified engineers chasing too few positions. Age discrimination was illegal, but that didn't stop hiring managers from finding creative reasons to pass over a 30-something with a gap in his employment history. The more I failed, the more Sophia pulled away. She stopped pretending to be supportive, stopped asking about job interviews or networking events. Instead, she started making pointed comments about how her friends' husbands were doing so much better, how Lucas had just gotten promoted to regional sales manager, how maybe I should consider a career change if engineering wasn't working out. The subtext was clear. I was failing as a provider, as a man, as a husband. By the time she filed for divorce, I wasn't even surprised. I was relieved, if I'm being honest. What hurt was the narrative she crafted afterward, the story she told to anyone who would listen about how she'd wasted her best years on a man with no ambition, no drive, no prospects. Her friends believed her. Her family believed her. Even some of my own relatives seemed to take her side, nodding sympathetically when she explained how she'd tried to support me but couldn't watch me throw my life away anymore. I stopped defending myself. What was the point? The evidence was right there in my bank account, in my unemployment status, in the studio apartment that smelled like industrial carpet cleaner and defeat. Maybe she was right. Maybe I was exactly what she said I was, a failure destined for poverty and isolation. The night shifts at the warehouse became my refuge. The work was simple and honest. Load the pallet, move the pallet, stack the boxes, scan the barcodes. There was no office politics, no performance reviews, no need to pretend I was anything other than what I was, a guy trying to pay rent and keep the lights on. The other operators were decent people who didn't ask too many questions about your past. They worked their shifts, collected their paychecks, and went home to their own struggles. My supervisor was a woman named Isabella Garcia, who'd been running night operations for 8 years. She was maybe 45, tough as desert ironwood, with graying hair she kept pulled back in a practical ponytail and forearms that could probably arm wrestle most of the guys on her crew. Isabella never asked personal questions or made small talk. She just handed out assignments and let people do their jobs. I appreciated that more than she could know. The warehouse itself was a monument to American commerce, a sprawling complex of steel and concrete that covered several city blocks. During the day it buzzed with activity, trucks backing up to loading docks, day shift workers moving inventory, supervisors with clipboards barking orders into headsets. But at night, it became something different, almost peaceful in its industrial vastness. The overhead lights cast long shadows between the towering shelves of medical supplies. The air conditioning units hummed their mechanical lullabies. Forklifts beeped and whirred through the aisles like mechanical insects going about their programmed routines. My coworker, a kid named Owen Mitchell, who couldn't have been more than 20, worked the shift opposite mine. Owen was one of those guys who still believed the world owed him something, still thought he was going to strike it rich with some get-rich-quick scheme he'd read about online. He talked constantly about cryptocurrency investments and multi-level marketing opportunities, always trying to recruit the other operators into whatever pyramid scheme had captured his imagination that week. One night during our break, we sat in the employee break room, a depressing space with fluorescent lighting and vending machines that ate your dollar bills, eating sandwiches we'd packed from home to save money. Owen asked me what I used to do before this, and I told him I'd worked as a biomedical engineer, developed some projects, had ideas that never quite panned out. Owen nodded with the wisdom of youth and went back to scrolling through his phone, probably looking at Bitcoin prices or Instagram influencers selling lifestyle courses. I didn't tell him the rest of the story. How I'd once believed I was going to revolutionize medical diagnostics for diabetic patients. How I'd had a business partner who shared the same vision. How, somewhere along the way, life had gotten in the way of dreams and turned them into just another set of disappointments to carry around. One night, around 2 a.m., I was moving a shipment of glucose monitoring equipment from the receiving dock to the main floor when I caught my reflection in the polished metal siding of a storage unit. The man looking back at me was older than 32, worn down by heat and manual labor, and the accumulated weight of failure. His hair was already showing gray at the temples. His shoulders were permanently hunched from operating machinery. His hands were permanently stained with hydraulic fluid and warehouse grime. I thought about calling my mother, but she was in a memory care facility in Tucson now and had good days and bad days. On the good days, she remembered who I was and asked about Sophia, not knowing we'd divorced. On the bad days, she called me by my father's name and asked when he was coming home from work, even though he'd been dead for 5 years. Those conversations were harder than the silence. I thought about calling my brother Danny, but we hadn't spoken since Thanksgiving 2 years ago, when he'd made some comment about how I needed to get my act together and stop making excuses. Danny was a successful insurance adjuster in Flagstaff with a wife, 2 kids, and a mortgage on a 4-bedroom house. He'd never understood why I couldn't just pick a stable career and stick with it like normal people. Somewhere in the back of my mind, I remembered a project Jackson Cole and I had built during our senior year at Arizona State. A glucose monitoring device that was supposed to change everything for diabetic patients. Non-invasive, accurate, affordable enough for people without premium insurance coverage. We'd called it GlucoScan Pro, and we'd been so sure it would make us millionaires before we turned 25. I wondered what ever happened to that patent we'd filed. We were so young and optimistic then, convinced we'd revolutionize medical diagnostics and retire by 30. The device had actually worked, too. Our prototype could measure blood glucose levels through the skin using near-infrared spectroscopy, no needles required. The readings were accurate within 5% of traditional fingerstick methods, and the manufacturing cost would have been a fraction of existing monitors. But, like so many college projects, it got filed away and forgotten as real life took over. Then I pushed the thought away and kept working. There was no point in dwelling on what might have been when I had pallets to move and bills to pay. It was a Tuesday night, or maybe Wednesday morning. The hours blurred together on the overnight shift, marked only by the gradual emptying of the parking lot as the evening workers went home and the slow accumulation of fatigue in my bones. I was in the loading dock, organizing a shipment of medical supplies that had come in late from a distributor in California. The boxes were heavier than usual, blood pressure monitors, and portable EKG machines destined for rural clinics across Arizona and New Mexico. I was checking serial numbers against the manifest when I heard footsteps behind me, the distinctive sound of dress shoes on concrete. I turned around expecting to see Isabella, or maybe someone from the day shift who'd forgotten something. Instead, I saw Jackson Cole. He looked almost exactly the same as he had 10 years ago, maybe a little older, a little grayer around the temples, but still the same guy who'd sat next to me in advanced biomedical, engineering and stayed up all night coding with me in the ASU computer lab. He was wearing a tailored business suit that probably cost more than I made in 2 months, and he carried himself with the confidence of someone who'd never had to worry about making rent. I blinked hard, certain I was hallucinating from exhaustion and industrial fumes. "Mason," Jackson said, his voice carrying that familiar mix of intelligence and barely contained excitement I remembered from our college days. "I've been looking for you for 3 weeks." I set down the clipboard I was holding, my hands suddenly unsteady. "Jackson, what the hell are you doing here? How did you even find me?" Jackson smiled, but there was something serious behind it, something that suggested this wasn't a social call. "You remember that device we built senior year, the one we submitted to the patent office?" Of course I remembered. We'd called it GlucoScan Pro, and we'd been convinced it would change everything for diabetic patients worldwide. We'd spent months refining the algorithms, testing prototypes on volunteer students, documenting everything with the obsessive detail of young engineers who believed they were on the verge of something revolutionary. "What about it?" I asked, though my heart was already starting to pound with something that might have been hope. Jackson stepped closer, lowering his voice even though we were alone in the loading dock. "A company called Alpine Medical Systems acquired our patent. They've been using a modified version of our original design for the last 6 years without telling us. When I found out, I hired a lawyer. We sued. And last month, they settled." The words hung in the air like desert heat shimmer, visible but somehow unreal. I stared at him, trying to process what he was saying. "Settled for what?" Jackson reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded piece of paper, legal documents with official letterheads and signatures that looked important and expensive. He handed it to me with the reverence of someone passing along a winning lottery ticket. $18 million, he said, "and according to the original patent agreement we signed back in college, you still own 40%. The numbers didn't register at first. My brain seemed to have short-circuited, unable to process the mathematics of sudden wealth. $18 million, 40%. I read the papers 3 times before the words started to make sense. $18 million times. A0M40 equals 7.2 million. After taxes and legal fees, probably around 5.8 million. I leaned against the forklift behind me, my legs suddenly unreliable. The loading dock spun slightly, and I had to grip the metal frame to steady myself. "This is real?" I asked, my voice sounding strange and distant. Jackson nodded, his expression serious now. "I've been trying to find you for weeks. You're not exactly easy to track down these days. I tried your old addresses, called your old employers, even contacted some classmates, finally tracked you down through unemployment records and DMV registrations. I looked around the loading dock, the pallets of medical equipment, the concrete floors stained with hydraulic fluid, the industrial fans that barely moved the stifling desert air, the plastic name tag clipped to my work shirt that read, Mason, in block letters. The contrast between this moment and this place seemed surreal, like a fever dream brought on by too many double shifts and too much cheap coffee. "I've been here," I said quietly, "just trying to survive." Jackson put a hand on my shoulder, and I could see genuine concern in his eyes. We'd been close once, close enough that he could read my moods and understand what I wasn't saying. "You don't have to survive anymore, Mason. You won. We won." I didn't cry, I didn't shout or jump up and down or do any of the things you might expect from someone who just learned they'd become a millionaire. I just stood there holding those legal documents, feeling something I hadn't felt in years, slowly awakening in my chest. Hope. For the first time since Sophia had walked out and told me I'd die poor and alone, I believed that maybe she was wrong. Maybe I wasn't the failure she said I was. Maybe I never had been. I folded the papers carefully and put them in my pocket, right next to my heart. Then I looked at Jackson and said the only thing I could think of. "Let's get out of here and talk." Jackson took me to a 24-hour diner near downtown Phoenix, the kind of place that served breakfast all night and didn't ask questions about why 2 men in their 30s were having what looked like a business meeting at 3 a.m. The Sunnyside Diner was a relic from the 1960s. All cracked vinyl booths and formica countertops, staffed by waitresses who'd seen everything and were unimpressed by most of it. We sat in a booth near the back, away from the handful of other late-night customers. A trucker working on his 3rd cup of coffee, a young couple sharing a piece of pie, an off-duty security guard reading a paperback novel. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting everything in that particular shade of institutional green that made everyone look slightly ill. Jackson ordered us both coffee, black, and I listened as he explained everything that had happened over the past 2 years. I was working for a consulting firm in San Diego, Jackson began, stirring sugar into his coffee with the methodical precision I remembered from our lab work. Medical device regulatory compliance, mostly FDA approval processes for startups. Boring, but lucrative. Anyway, I was reviewing some patent filings for a client when I came across something that looked familiar, really familiar. He pulled out his phone and showed me a technical diagram that made my heart skip. It was our glucose monitor design, down to the specific wavelength specifications and algorithm, architecture we'd developed, but the patent holder wasn't listed as Jackson Cole and Mason Brooks. It was Alpine Medical Systems, filed 6 years ago, with no mention of prior art or original inventors. They'd modified the housing design and updated the software interface, Jackson continued, but the core technology was identical to what we'd built. Same spectroscopic approach, same calibration methodology, same signal processing algorithms. They'd even kept some of the variable names from our original code. I stared at the phone screen, feeling a mixture of rage and vindication that I hadn't experienced in years. How was that even legal? It's not, Jackson said grimly. That's patent theft, plain and simple. The problem was proving it. Our original patent application was filed 10 years ago, but we'd never followed up on it or tried to commercialize the technology. As far as Alpine was concerned, we'd abandoned the intellectual property. The waitress refilled our coffee cups without being asked, a professional courtesy that spoke to years of late-night service. I wrapped my hands around the ceramic mug, feeling the warmth seep into palms that were still calloused from forklift controls. But you had the original files, I said. I had everything, Jackson confirmed. The original patent application, dated and notarized. Our lab notebooks from senior year with all the preliminary research. The source code for our prototype software. Even some of our email exchanges about the project. I'd kept it all in a storage unit, thinking maybe someday I'd come back to it. He went on to explain how he'd hired an intellectual property lawyer named Patricia Chen, a specialist in patent litigation who worked for a firm that represented individual inventors against large corporations. The case had taken 18 months to resolve, mostly because Alpine Medical's legal team had tried every possible delaying tactic and technicality they could think of. They claimed we'd waited too long to assert our rights, Jackson explained. They said the statute of limitations had expired. They argued that our college project was just academic research, not a commercial invention. They even tried to claim that since we'd never manufactured or sold the device, we didn't have standing to sue. But Patricia Chen had been thorough and aggressive. She'd documented Alpine Medical's profits from their glucose monitoring division. Over $200 million in revenue since they'd launched the product. She'd deposed their engineers and proven that they'd based their design on our published research. She'd even found emails between Alpine executives joking about how they'd improved on some college kid's science project. The smoking gun was when we found out they had actually contacted our old professor, Dr. Martinez, asking for details about student projects from that year, Jackson said. They'd been specifically looking for abandoned intellectual property they could appropriate. The settlement negotiations had been brutal. Alpine Medical had initially offered $500,000, claiming that was generous for what they called obsolete academic research. But Patricia Chen had pushed back hard, pointing out that their glucose monitoring division was one of their most profitable product lines and that they'd built their entire market position on stolen technology. In the end, they agreed to $18 million, Jackson said. They wanted to avoid a public trial that would have exposed their business practices. Bad publicity in the medical device industry can kill a company's reputation with hospitals and insurance providers. According to our original partnership agreement from college, a document we drafted on Jackson's laptop and gotten notarized at a bank near campus, I owned 40% of any profits or settlements related to the GlucoScan Pro patent. It had seemed like a meaningless piece of paper at the time, something we'd done because our entrepreneurship professor had insisted that all student ventures needed proper legal documentation. After legal fees and taxes, Jackson said, you're looking at around $5.8 million. The money gets transferred to our accounts within 30 days. I shook my head, still struggling to process the numbers. $5.8 million, Dust. It was more money than I'd ever imagined having. Certainly more than I'd made in my entire working life combined. It was enough to change everything. Where I lived, what I did, who I could become. "You can quit that warehouse job," Jackson continued, watching my face for signs that I was processing what he was telling me. "You can do whatever you want. Travel, invest, start something new. This is your second chance, Mason. Not many people get one of those." We talked until the sun came up over the desert mountains, turning the sky from black to purple to gold. By the time I left the diner, I had a plan forming in my mind. But first, I had one more shift to finish. The first thing I did was finish my shift at the warehouse. I owed Isabella Garcia that much respect. When 6 a.m. rolled around and the day crew started filtering in, I found her in the supervisor's office doing inventory reports, her reading glasses perched on the end of her nose, as she reconciled shipping manifests with computer records. "I need to quit," I said, standing in the doorway. Isabella looked up from her clipboard, studying my face with the practiced eye of someone who'd supervised night shift workers for nearly a decade. There was something different about me. The way I stood, the way I met her eyes, like a weight I'd been carrying for months had suddenly been lifted. "Something better come along?" she asked. "Yeah," I said. "Something much better." She didn't ask for details, and I didn't volunteer any. Isabella was the kind of supervisor who respected boundaries and understood that everyone had their own story. She just nodded, shook my hand firmly, and wished me luck. I walked out of that warehouse for the last time, leaving behind the forklift and the night shifts and the smell of hydraulic fluid that had become the soundtrack to my lowest point. The first major change I made was moving out of my studio apartment. I found a house in North Scottsdale, a modest 3-bedroom place with a pool and mountain views that would have been completely beyond my reach just weeks earlier. It wasn't ostentatious. I wasn't trying to prove anything to anyone, but it was clean and comfortable and mine. For the first time in years, I had space to breathe. I bought a used Ford F-150 and paid cash, enjoying the look of surprise on the salesman's face when I pulled out a stack of bills instead of applying for financing. I donated most of my old work clothes to a homeless shelter downtown and bought a wardrobe that didn't smell like industrial cleaning products and defeat. Most importantly, I started eating better and sleeping on a regular schedule. No more convenience store sandwiches eaten in break rooms under fluorescent lights. No more waking up at 9 p.m. to prepare for another night of manual labor. I was starting to feel human again, starting to remember what it felt like to have energy and optimism and plans that extended beyond the next paycheck. 6 months after the settlement, Jackson and I launched our new company. We called it Precision Biosystems, Inc., and it was everything GlucoScan Pro should have been 10 years earlier. We had the capital now to do things right. Proper research and development, FDA compliance from the beginning, strategic partnerships with medical device distributors who could get our products into hospitals and clinics nationwide. We started with an improved version of our glucose monitoring technology, but this time, we protected our intellectual property aggressively and built a business model that could scale. We hired a team of engineers, smart recent graduates who reminded me of Jackson and myself at that age. Brilliant, motivated, eager to make a difference in the world. Our offices were in a converted warehouse in Tempe, all exposed brick and floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out over the Salt River Valley. It was the kind of space that felt like possibility, where you could imagine changing the world one innovation at a time. We had our first prototype ready within 4 months and our FDA submission filed within 8. The news about the Alpine medical settlement broke on a Tuesday afternoon. A medical industry trade publication called MedTech Today ran a story about our lawsuit and the $18 million settlement that had resulted. The headline read, "College patent leads to 8-figure settlement for 2 Arizona engineers." The article included details about how Alpine Medical had appropriated our technology, built their entire glucose monitoring division around stolen intellectual property, and tried to cover their tracks when confronted with evidence. It mentioned Jackson by name and identified me as his business partner, though it didn't include specifics about where I'd been working or what I'd been doing during the years since graduation. I didn't share the article on social media. I didn't call anyone or make announcements. I just waited. The response was swift and predictable. My phone started buzzing with messages from people I hadn't heard from in years. Old college friends, distant relatives, former coworkers who suddenly wanted to reconnect. Everyone loves a comeback story, especially when there's money involved. I ignored most of them, but I paid attention to the message that came from Sophia. It arrived at 11:30 p.m., just a few words. Is this real? I stared at the text for a long time, imagining her sitting in Lucas's expensive condo, scrolling through the article on her phone, watching her entire worldview shift as she realized what had happened. The man she'd dismissed as a failure, the husband she'd discarded as worthless, had just become wealthier than she'd ever imagined. She called repeatedly over the next few days. I let every call go to voicemail, listening to increasingly desperate messages in which she apologized, made excuses, and eventually begged for a chance to explain. I heard through mutual acquaintances that Lucas had broken up with her within a week of the news breaking. Apparently, dating a woman whose ex-husband was now worth nearly $6 million had complicated his sense of masculine superiority. The last I heard, Sophia had moved back in with her parents in Tempe after losing her job at the hospital. Something about attendance issues and performance problems that everyone understood were really about showing up hungover and distracted too many times. Her social media went quiet. No more vacation photos, no more restaurant check-ins, no more posts about living her best life. I didn't gloat. I didn't send her articles about my success or photos of my new life. I simply lived well, and that was revenge enough. Sometimes the best revenge truly is living well, and I was living very well indeed.